Used to live in the Southwest. Let us welcome Holly Roberts.
I guess we're good to go. So, hello everybody. It's thrilled to see you. I was just telling Mary that this is my third time speaking here. And the first time I came, I was a young mother. Well, I was not young, but I was a mother with a young baby. And I brought my husband. My little girl was 6 months old, and now she's 36. But the best thing about that talk was Bob, my husband, had Ramey in the back, and she started to make some noises, and I said, "Could you please quiet that baby?" And everybody in the audience went, I thought, oh, Holly, humor, God, got you in trouble there. So then, and that was again just the beginning of my career. It was wonderful. MOPA supported me, brought me out, did the talk. I think I had some work up in a show, and then the next time was I had another little show here, and they brought me out, and it was a lovely group, and the stars, I remember the stars always. And now this third time, in this beautiful, beautiful show. Last night I was just kind of on a high, just from looking at the work, and now just hearing my introduction, it's like, wow, who is this person? So it's good to have a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and a lot of people I met last night are back again. Dragged my husband, Robert, in once again. My best supporter and biggest, and what's interesting too now is he's, over the years, he's always been the first person I would show work to. And then it was thumbs up or thumbs down, and then I'd either be done or have to continue it, and now he's an artist, and guess what I get to do? And it's really fun. So with that, let me go ahead and start. We're gonna have questions and answers at the end, but I just love, I want you to ask anything that comes to mind, anything that pops into your head. Those are the funnest part of these talks is when people have questions. So let's go ahead and start, and I hit. So this is a little Vimeo that a PBS in New Mexico.
Holly, I would like to begin with what we have here on set today, and let's start with that one. What is that, and how did you make it?
Well, that is a mixed media piece. It's called Awkward Rider, and it's the accumulation of about, I guess, almost 40 years of the way that I work, of putting together material. I start with paint, and then I bring in other materials, and I form basically a story. And when I start out, I don't know where the story's gonna go. I just start. I have over 200,000 photo files that I can use as information, plus I'm always taking photographs. And this is about my starting to horseback ride again about 5 years ago. Because I'd always been around horses, always had horses, but then as an adult I gave it up. And then when I started riding again, it wasn't the same fluid, easy thing it had been when I was young. And so as an awkward rider, this is what I felt like when I got on these huge horses, and it seemed dangerous and sort of scary, but at the same time thrilling.
Titling a piece of art, how important is that to you, and do you think it matters to the people who see your art?
Oh, absolutely it matters. I don't come up with the title usually until I'm about 2/3 or done with the piece, and then it will come to me. But I think it's a clue for people to find out more about it. I think that people need to have some sort of inroad into what you're doing.
The title could almost be thought of like a door then. So
Absolutely.
what is the door for this piece?
Well, this is called Supplicant. This was done around 2017. These are fairly recent. And in this case, it was just had this beautiful blue background, and then the body of the chair and the legs of the horse are all made from things that I painted. But Supplicant is about petitioning something for something important. And so I think that horses have always been these kind of mysterious big animals that they do things for you.
It made me think about being of service to each other. So can titles and perception of your work, is that sort of up to the viewer?
Well, I think if it's good, I think you should be able to bring your own agenda to it.
Let's talk about one more piece. I understand this one's called Making Rain.
It just seems like living in the Southwest, and especially now in the last 10, 15 years, our extreme weather is drought. And so I think it's something that's always on my mind. And then my husband and I lived in Zuni for 8 years. And of course, they have these rain dances. And they were just beautiful and powerful. So I think in my art, there's this asking for rain. And that's what this is called, Making Rain, this piece. And it's really about petitioning the gods to give us some rain. And like the Zunis had their dances, I have my paintings. And they come up every year or so, I'll do a rain painting.
Does it make it rain?
No.
You are known for combining photography and painting. What makes those things go together?
I think what happened was I was one of the first people to kind of do that, to take photography, which was just becoming accepted as a fine art media, and then take paint, which the photographers were just terrified of paint. It was like, but I wasn't. I was too dumb. I first started painting over photographs, and then changed to putting photographs on top of the paintings. But there's something about the reality and the non-reality that's very powerful. You have the reality of the photo with the non-reality of the marks of the paint or the things that I make up and put in. When I start out, I had the idea of a horse, so I was basically looking at the body first, and I had lots of different material that I used to try and form the body of the horse. And this is
Early on, your work was described as abusing the photograph. How did you take to sort of that label or that phrase being applied to what you did?
I actually gave it to myself.
Okay.
I just love it because again, I think that I was sort of the darling of the photography world for a while, because I think they were all so excited that I was just beating the heck out of these photos. I mean, I was cutting them up, I was taking them apart, and I'm really not a great photographer. But I was able to take these photographs and make them be something else. By cutting them up, by transfiguring them and transposing them, they become something that was more powerful.
I'm interested in how you begin. Is it a theme? Is it the mediums? Is it looking around your collection of paints and photographs? How do you start with?
Well, I think I'm a looker. I start with a painting. I take paint and I just throw it around. I paint outside because it's so messy. And it's like there's a fairy tale of a little girl, and she puts on these ballet shoes, and they're magical, and she dances and dances, but then she can't stop dancing, and she has to cut her feet off. And I sort of feel like that when I paint. I just can't stop. I go and go. I won't go to the bathroom. I won't get anything to eat. I get paint everywhere. So that's what starts. I make maybe 20, 30 background paintings, and then I'll come in, and I have all these photographs that I have. Too many almost. I mean, they're so deep. But I'll begin to take them and lay them out and cut them up and put them down and see what happens. And then I'll begin to follow a storyline that it will begin to make sense. And I'll maybe work on maybe 5 at a time, and I'll put them up on the wall. They may take a couple of months to finish, but I'll be constantly adding or taking away. And then at some point they're done.
How do you know when you're finished?
Your stomach stops hurting.
How have your concerns or fears or anxieties about the world influenced what you make?
I think I'm a naturally anxious person. And so I think that's what comes through. I'm not someone who does happy, joyful work. I do work that connects with that deeper, darker side. Although I think it's often funny stuff too. I mean, I think there's humor to it. But that's how I approach the world. That's how I see it. I'm a glass half empty kind of person. And so that's what I connect with.
Has that changed over time? In other words, has the world gotten crazier and you've gotten calmer?
I've gotten calmer, I've gotten saner, I've gotten psychologically healthier, but the world has gotten crazier and crazier to the point that you just don't even want to watch the news because it's so bad. So I'm a much happier person. When I look back at some of my earlier paintings, I think, wow, that was pretty intense. But so yeah, it's flipped. The world's worse. I mean, maybe the world was bad all along and I just didn't see it.
So in 30 plus years of doing this, what have you discovered?
God, I think it's an ongoing discovery. I don't think it's an end. I don't think you go through the door and there you have it. I think you're always opening doors, opening doors, opening doors. And every time I do a piece, I think I can never do another good piece again. I'm done, that's it. So I think it's as simple as that. There's no big aha moment.
I want to know more about that. You think you're done at the end of every piece. How do you start anew?
In your hands. I think your hands get going. They do whatever, write or make, and I think that's why painting's so important for me, because it makes once my hands take over, then my head can go out and, like smoke a cigarette or whatever. But my hands are in charge. That's my creative self. It's letting my unconscious take over, because mostly our consciouses are in control. So that allows me to have this more powerful thing take charge.
So I do not feel comfortable when I look at your art. I wonder if that is a common response from folks who talk to you about what you've made. What is the feedback for the most part?
Well, mostly I'll get it sideways. People will, oh, that one was really scary. And I'll think, what? But mostly people are too polite to say that to you. And usually when I have a review written, it's positive. It's talking about the complicated things that it's saying. So I don't really hear that much, but I think it is a common thing. And mostly, I think people don't look at it and feel comfortable. But the people that do, not only do they not feel comfortable, but they're also laughing, or they're also feeling excited and intrigued and interested. I hope. I mean, that's what I would hope. But
it's a little bit that moment of laughing at the wrong moment during the movie. In cruising your catalog, I think I did that a couple of times.
Yeah.
So what do you want people in the end to take from what you've made?
Well, I want them to love the work. I don't want them to feel separated or anxious or, afraid or uncomfortable, but it's what it is. And I can't control that. I mean, that's the thing, I'm not in control. I'm only the hands that do the bidding of the unconscious directive. And so if we're gonna do something that's scary, okay, well, we'll do that, so. One time a gallery director told me that snakes and red never sold. So for about 6 months, I just did snakes and red,
So art not as an act of manipulation, but potentially at least as an act of rebellion a little bit.
Yeah, or somehow that creative self saying, I'm gonna do exactly what I wanna do, so.
Habitat is an easy
So I'm doing something here that I don't usually do, which is show images of my studio. But everybody hear me okay? Good. So this is my studio in Corrales, New Mexico. I got a big NEA grant when I was younger, and I took that grant and I bought a mutual fund. My mother told me to buy a certain mutual fund, and I did, and it doubled within 2 years, and then I took that money and built a studio. That's what I thought mutual funds did. I didn't know that was just this aberration of this money that sort of came to me. So I was able to take that money, build a studio, have it be very specific to what I wanted, so this is the outside of it. This is the porch that I work on. As I mentioned, I make a huge mess when I work. I'm throwing paint, I'm dripping it, and I'm doing all kinds of things. And what I have is I have sawhorses that I put tables on and I spread out so that I could just go with my shoes on that I can't take off, and just go from panel to panel to panel doing these paintings. And as I mentioned also, I'll do maybe 20 at a time, and maybe take me a week or so to do it because I'll come back and repaint. And then I'll take those 20, and over the next 6 months, that's what I'll form images from. So here I am getting ready to do it. This is the inside of my studio, one of the rooms. And notice how clean and precise, and, well, not. This is how it looks when I get working. There's paper everywhere, there's stuff out. Because when you're working for what you're seeing, I can't remember. I have to see it so I can remember it. And I have archives of hands and eyes and horses and dogs, and so I'll get out my folders with them and spread them out and find them, and then I'm cutting up new ones and printing new ones. So it gets pretty wild. This is just an example of, I have a box of heads, and I have not real heads women, real heads women, not real heads men, etc., and masks, dog heads. I mean, it's just at one point a woman who was a librarian saw my system, and she said, wow, that's really something, just in terms of ordering it. So these are 2 panels that I was painting from that group that I showed you. So the one on the left, you can see that's just the paint, the way it looks before anything happens. So then this is how this one on the left ended up. It's called Woman with Cigarette. And the dots are actually cut out and glued down. They're not painted. Once I've done the painting, I just hate losing that control. So a lot of times I'll collage rather than, looks like spontaneous paint, but it's not. It's actually little dots that I cut out and glued down. And then I just love putting cigarettes in images. And I myself have never smoked. I think it's terrible, but there's something so wicked about it. I just love it. And this is the other side. This is called Dog with Spots. And again, the spots are glued. This is a head of a dog who lives near me, who's always barking at me. And so that's what happened to him. And then these are just a few I put in. This one, I think we saw a woman listening to herself. This is when I was painting on the photograph with oil paint, so it's all photograph. This is beginning to take different materials, put them onto an acrylic background, and then in this case I was taking the paper. I had cut out trees, and then I love the negative space, and so I ended up incorporating it into the rabbit. It's called rabbit asking. This one is a pretty large piece, and again, it's just the idea of taking all these different materials, and that her body is made up of dictionary pages that have been painted on. The face, I'll photograph dolls, or I'll photograph from art books, folk art, or that kind of thing, and then of course my own photograph. I mean, they're my own photographs, but those heads are not mine, they're from something else. And she's climbed up that rickety ladder, and she's just jumped off, and I hope she's gonna fly. Those rocks look pretty sharp down there, so woman floating. And then this is one of my husband Bob and I. It's called Little House, and I think it talks about when you've been in a relationship for a long time, it's both good and bad, you're sort of together, but you're together. So notice that little house. So I ended up putting it into this image, which is called Dog at the Door. And it's really referring to the wolf at the door, the dog at the door, trouble, there's trouble coming. This is called coyote trotting, again, just different materials. Seeing how far I can go and taking reality. You might notice he has a number of legs that aren't correct. And then I think too, the ultimate goal of what I do is to be as simple as I can in making something work, to take the paint and make it be just right in the edge of reality. Those to me are the most wonderful ones. So this was, again, I painted on these dictionary pages and then come back in with just little bits of photo and given this woman with blue arms. And then this, I am kind of torturing you guys here, but so this is when I teach. These are the processes we do, but this is what my students, somebody copied down all the things I said. So chop wood, carry water, do the hard work. 100 paintings first. You got to do 100 paintings before you can feel like you can begin to even say you're a painter or an artist. It's what you don't know that's more interesting than what you know, which is what I'm saying to everybody. Let go of that conscious crap. It's no good. It's your unconscious. Follow your hands. Don't let your brain get in the way. You can never lower your prices. You have to like your dealer. The piece has to be able to speak for itself. In other words, you shouldn't be standing there explaining it. It should be able to be interpreted and appreciated without you there. Studio time is sacred and must not be interrupted. And I tell my students that whatever, it doesn't matter, they have to set aside a certain amount of time, maybe once a week, but it can't be interrupted. It's gotta be, you gotta show up if that's gonna happen. It doesn't matter how you feel or what you're thinking, you've gotta show up and you gotta do that. And then I'm always asking, when people would ask me for advice, I'd say, well, what do you think about your piece? And then they tell me, and of course they knew exactly what they needed to know. And unless you absolutely love your final product, don't put it out in the world. I think people will get halfway there, they'll kind of like it, they'll think, oh, I worked hard. No, you have to just love it to death before you put it out. Find your community. Obsession is not just fine, it's great. Try it, you can wipe it off or paint over it. Cut it well. I'm very hard on people about doing good cuts. If it's too pretty, it's not leaving our workshop. We don't do pretty. Do whatever it takes to get started. Work in the studio during your best hours. I'm better in the afternoon and not so great in the mornings. No matter the little or how much, set up a regular time to work in the studio and honor it. And then I'm always saying everybody, so they threw that in there too. So with that, now I'm going to go to the next. So this is a lot of images. I feel a little guilty about that. But what I've done is I've started from a long time ago and just sort of worked up to now. So this is my husband, Robert. And when I first started painting on photographs, I saw myself as a printmaker, not as a photographer. But I had these photographs. I'd seen a woman named Karen Truax who tinted photographs. I was able to make photographs, had a darkroom accessible. And so I had Bob was my model. And so he put on a mask and I started coming back in with paint and these wonderful things started to happen. Man with a Mask, this is about 1980, I think. So the other constant in my work has been my daughters. This is now later. But again, what I could do now is I had a darkroom where I could do big prints. So I could do big prints, project on the wall, and then come back in. So Ramey's on the left. She's my sort of solid, down-to-earth daughter. Teal, unfortunately isn't here, so I can't tease him. She's the little dog. This is called A Girl with Small Dog Nipping, and that's their relationship. And you can kind of see Teal's face through as the dog. A lot of what I was doing too in photographing was taking bad photographs that were blurry or that I'd use a pinhole camera and using those as the foundations for the photos. This was at the Yuma Dog Track, and these were the Greyhound. I don't know if they still have that Greyhound track there, but anyway, they're pretty great. I was able to, some of you may have noticed in the show, by taking a bunch of photographs and stacking them, I could do bigger images. So this is called Woman with Arms Raised, and it's quite big. It's bigger than life size. And it's kind of upsetting to me, this piece actually, because this was my next door neighbor. And she came over and posed for me. She was having a lot of trouble with her stepfather and just troubled, and it turns out that she was bipolar and there were issues. And anyway, she ended up dying. We think it was an overdose, but we're not sure. And so to me, this piece is kind of prophetically about that. I photograph everybody. Again, you might get nervous if I photograph you because who knows what I'll do. Poor Bob. He can talk about the experience. But this is a young man who was a student who I just loved his wonderful face. And this now is taking photographs, cutting them out, gluing them down onto panels. So that gave me a different format than that same old photo paper format. So that sort of was opening the door to collaging, which I was doing it, but it was still with the oil paint. So photo first, oil paint on top. This is now, you can see the square of the photo where it's been glued down. This is another image of my daughter Teal, and probably the most popular image I've ever done. I'm not sure why. It's called Small Wolf in the Forest, and it was actually used on the cover of a psychology magazine for schizophrenia. It's called Tired Angel. A piece I just love. It just, the title says it all. And these now are still oil over the photo. And you can tell there's a sort of different quality. This is called Breach. These are, I do lots of images about couples and about their relationships, and usually they're not always positive. There's some tension there. These are ones of my husband and I did with pinhole camera, and the series is called King and Queen. So the photos were very funky. Pinhole cameras do that. So I was able to take these little photos, glue them onto panel, and then come back in. And then this one is sort of that Jungian myth of each of us have a king and queen inside of us. And again, that's Bob and I. I end up doing these kind of ugly ones that I just love. But they're these again, it's couples, it's relationships. And it's called Two People Talking. And one of the things that I was doing here was doing a kind of transfer where you take a photograph and transfer it onto the surface, and that allows what's behind to come through. So I could do the hair, those are trees and bushes. Instead of having to cut out each one, I could transfer it, and it would be not transparent, but would show up behind it. This is called Couple Considering, again. Bob and I, poor Bob. Bob, if you want to leave, I'll understand. So that's us. There's all sorts of processes here. There's transfers, there's direct glue, but this is, again, with oil paint over the image. In 2004, I just couldn't keep doing it. And it wasn't that clear. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to stop doing this. I just wasn't painting. I've always been very rigorous about getting in my studio, 2 o'clock, work. And then I wasn't. I was going to soccer games, I was doing dishes, I was laundry, stuff that seemed important, but really I was avoiding going into my studio. So I realized I needed a sabbatical. So I took the year off, and I learned a little Photoshop badly, but I began to use a digital camera, which was new. It was just at this time that digital cameras were becoming sort of acceptable and usable, and figured out how to get the pictures onto my computer and how to do very simple stuff with them. But as a result, then I flipped the process. So what I started doing was painting with acrylic paint instead of oil, and then coming in and gluing the images on top. And when I first did it, it was hard because I was trying to actually cut out a person and glue them down. And what I found out was it wasn't making the actual person, it was taking bits and pieces and putting it together. And then that would make the image. So you can see this one, a bird flew into one of my windows, and that's that dead duck at the bottom. And this is this man, he's alarmed, and the birds are flying off, and it's all about what we're doing to the environment, I mean, in that way. This is called Forest Father. And this was when I was in Virginia. I did a residency, and they had all these concrete animals. bunnies and bears and squirrels, and I thought, oh, okay, we're gonna ruin the environment, but it's okay because we have the concrete animals. So this is his poor forest father, and this is kudzu, is in his, making up his body. And then instead of real animals, he's got all these concrete animals, because why not? Because they last a lot longer anyway. And then this is Forest Mother, and it was sort of the same idea. I think she's just really distressed over what's happening. The hands were the hands of a folk artist who did these, Wallace Simpson, does these beautiful folk art sculptures, and so I was able to photograph his hands and have her, and again, that's kudzu in her body. I think this one we showed in the little piece is called Trying to Keep Trouble Away. And I did it in 2008, right when the crash happened. So it was like everything was just blowing up, and she's just doing her best to kind of keep it all away. This is Hungry Cat. I don't know if you can see, but the bird's nests are in the bell and the body. No, those are actually dead birds that I photographed on her back. So it's about cats and what they do to birds. You know, I guess that's the way most birds are killed, is by cats. Either that or they fly into the solar. Anyway, somebody can correct me if they need to. This is called the rapture. I've always been just fascinated by the idea that when the rapture comes, the good people will shoot up and us bad people will stay down. And these were barbecue grills in a friend's folk artist's yard. He was using them as art. So we have a lot of coyotes where I live in Corrales, and this is called coyote turning, and I both love them and don't love them. A friend just had her little dog killed and eaten by a coyote, and we have little dogs, so there's always that, but I just love them. They're what's wild in our environment, and they're always trotting around and stealing chickens and doing wicked coyote things. So that's coyote turning. Same thing here. This is called coyote discussing. And if you can see in his body, that's actually the body of a dead coyote. And then that's another head of a dead coyote. And then, of course, the body is made up of bits and pieces of brush. Another coyote. This one was done using that transfer method, so everything is very see-through. A friend of mine had a fox that she found that was dead. She sent me photographs of this beautiful fox. So I used the head in this image, and that's the wash, making up the body, and then the birds on his back, fox with birds. We had a dog that we took care of. It was my daughter's dog, Cash, and he was a great big, what are the mastiff? And he was just big, and he was a watchdog, and we just loved him. And so I ended up doing this image about him. So I used the dictionary pages to make the paint space, and then had painted his body, came in with the spots, and then transferred the trees. But it's called Watchdog. Here's that dog that you all saw, the dog with spots. And this is a little dog that I actually, his name is DOG, dog. And I actually drew it, looking at the photograph, and then I used other eyes. So it's unusual for me, because usually I don't draw stuff. I usually use bits, collage to make it. But I did the drawing, did a blind contour, and then ended up with this little painting. Snake handler, because of my fascination with snakes. And they scare me. If I see a snake, and of course I'm in the Southwest, so there's always a possibility of rattlesnakes, but any little snake and I'll just jump backwards. But these are all snakes that I photographed either dead or alive. And in this case, what I do is I take a panel, and it's got wet paint on it. And then I take a brush with paint in it, and I draw. So I drew the figure of the body, and then if I don't like it, I squeegee it out and start over again. So it's I have to really work quickly. And even though it looks simple, usually I've done these maybe 10 or 11 times before I get just what I want. And then I'll come back in and I'll add the photographic head and the snake and all that information. So same thing here. This is David and Goliath. I drew in his body and then came in with a photographic head and the little figure in the background. but that's David getting Goliath on the run. This is another one of the squeegee ones where I draw in the horse and the figure, and then if I don't like it, I squeegee it out, but there's a trace of what was there, so then I can redraw it. Cowboy smoking. Because he's smoking as well as smoking. So a couple of years ago, I started doing images in the computer. So they live in the computer, they don't exist anywhere but in the computer, and what I do is I take my photographs and I come back in with Photoshop and I do things. And it's very hard for me because my brain doesn't work that way, but it's kind of fun because I just goof around, I don't know what I'm doing. So I've ended up with some of these images which I just really like. This is called Dark Rider. So again, you would only see it as a digital print. It's never existed in the real world except in the computer. This is called Old Horse. Again, in my life, I've been very attached to horses. I traded my bottle for a pair of cowboy boots when I was 4 and never looked back. This is a friend's horse who was old. She ended up having to put him down. And so it's kind of a tribute to Chevy. It's called Old Horse. And that's graffiti in his body, which had this wonderful relationship to me. This is, again, using that transfer method so that allows what's behind to come through the horse. This is a horse that I photographed a long time ago, and he was in a corral with a bunch of, I think, bucking broncos and stuff. And he wasn't doing well. He was thin and probably wasn't gonna last much longer, but perfect for me to photograph. Here's another supplicant. You saw the other one from the talk. So in this case, I was using palette paper, which is what you paint with. You know, you mix your paints on the palette paper, so that's what his body is. And then again, the legs are part of the chair, and then the head and the arms are photographic. Awkward Rider. I did a number of these large horse paintings, and they are made using paint peels. And what paint peels are is when you pour the paint out on a surface that when it dries you can peel it back. So these were pretty big paint peels, and what's nice is you pour them out, they dry, and then you flip them over and each side is different. And then you can you can cut them up, you can do things. So the body of the horse are all these different paint peels. Does that make sense, everybody? And then the rest is photographic information. And the clouds and the grass are also paint peels. They're just so fun. Here's another one, horse reaching. So the body is all paint peels as well as the clouds. Just the head and the tail, I think, are photographic, and the legs. And these are big, 40 by 50 kind of size. So this one is a very emotional one for me. I have a young friend, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And at the age of just my daughter's age, just like 33. So it's very, very upsetting, very scary. And I did this painting as a way of helping her heal or helping her be protected. It's called Horse with Angel. And she's good, she just had a baby. This is another one of these sort of prophetic ones that when I see it, I'm always kind of alarmed. So this is called Angel with Boy. And I did it when I was in Virginia, and it's about this angel leading this boy, and there seems to be this open body of water. And about that time, one of my daughter's friends was in, it was in Maine. He was going to school and college. He just started, it was Christmas break, and he disappeared, and nobody knew what happened to him. Anyway, it turned out he had fallen into the water and been there through the winter, and then when it thawed. And that's what this painting is about. I mean, I was upset about it at the time that he disappeared. I didn't connect, but that's what it was about until it turned out when they found his body that he'd been in the water. So anyway, and those happen every once in a while. They always spook me because I don't know what's going on until it's revealed. This is a bear, and this was using all these different cutout construction paper. Someone had cut holes in that brown head. The other stuff I think I found in some classroom. It was kids' work. And so it's about this bear. and just this wonderful kind of way it came together. I think we saw this one too in the talk. It's called Oh Cowboy, and this is really in a lot of ways about my husband's grandfather, who was a cowboy, and just putting together that his body is, he's older, I mean, he's no longer with us, but just all the elements that made up this old cowboy, and those are, of course, my cowboy boots. Girl floating. This is these are self-portraits that are coming up. So this was, these are little photos, and just working with the oil paint. So we're back to oil paints now. So this was done probably in the mid-'80s. And it's called Swimmer. It's me. Here's another one of me, self-portrait. Woman with pearls, in case you all didn't. And cigarette. And I think the only photographic element are the eyes, which are not mine, but that's me. This is another one, a woman with small dog barking. And that's, I think I mentioned this last night, but that's the text is from this naive artist or minister in Mississippi. Those were all that text that biblical text he'd written. And then this is, the bottom part of the dress is an old tree that is at the end of our block. It's one of the oldest trees in Corrales, a big cottonwood. And then this wonderful dog looking up at her. It's another self-portrait. It's called Snafe Neck. Another one, I think we saw this one too, and it's called Beautiful Woman. These are some pieces that I was experimenting with that have to do with washes, and I had them around for a long time and finally figured out how to get them to work, because the washes are so powerful. It's like, how can you get the wash not to speak more than the collaged elements? But I ended up putting features to these, and they ended up working. Here's another one with that. They're so hard, those washes, because the wash itself is just so powerful. You don't want to disrupt it in any way. This is called Working Man. And again, that's my husband, Robert, for the most part, his mouth. And just these washes are so great, but they're just tough to work with. And the stuff that I use to do the washes is water soluble. So that means that when I go over them to fix them or glue stuff that comes up, so I have to deal with that problem. It's that green Chinese. Do you all know what I'm talking about? No. Anyway, it's this wonderful stuff. Comes in a little green bottle, and it's great. And then it comes up when it gets wet. So watch out. Here's another one. I think this one might look familiar. Angry face. And then these are the most recent ones. I did these during COVID, and I found that, of course, we're all isolated, all this stuff is going on, but the thing that was so wonderful about COVID was nature sort of getting to come back. And you'd read about elephants in India who were just able to walk through towns, and the air pollution went down, and all these great things happened. So this is another forest mother, and it's really about that. It's really about us getting connected back to, not connected so much, but nature being able to come back and kind of heal itself. This is called Coyote Mother, same deal. She's got her pups out for a walk. And these are pretty big-ish. This is called Jesus Leaving, because I always feel like if Jesus were to show up now, he'd take off, he'd get out of here. No way am I staying around. And I love making the little exhaust bubbles from the exhaust. And always I like to throw the cross in the back, just so you know for sure it's Jesus. These are more of the digital prints. These are more recent. Again, just done in the computer. Deer with grass. What I had as a under photo was a dummy deer. So if you're a hunter, you have these dummies you can practice on, which just seemed, I mean, I'm not excited about people hunting deer anyway, but then this beautiful dummy deer, so I used that to kind of bring it back to life. This is called Guard Dog. This is that same dog, Cash, only now in this digital. So you can see they're quite different. These last ones, are my most recent ones, and I haven't worked in a couple of years. I've been trying to figure out what to do with all my work. I'm, a lot of work, and rather than just, die and have my poor daughters have to deal with 1,000 paintings, I've been trying to find places for it to go. So the museum was one of those solutions. I've been donating work to small art centers and universities where they'll really be appreciated. I read an article about, I think it was MoMA, and I saw a picture of their storage. I mean, it's like a city, and you just feel like if your piece goes there, it's never gonna see the light of day again. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years, is arranging for works, packing and shipping and sending it off. And kind of get that number down so that, again, my daughters aren't so overwhelmed by just this amount of work. A lot of my friends who are my age have either died or whatever, and people can't figure out what to do with their work. It's a real problem. A friend of mine who's an estate artist told me a story about a photographer. He was a man. He died, and his widow asked the Phillips collection back east if they would do a show of his work and take his work in their collection, and she'd give him $1 million. And they said no. So that gives you an idea, how they just don't want to miss. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. So I've kind of gotten that, and this show is kind of bringing that all to a head. So now I'm back working. I'm working with those washes. These are little pieces. I was just showing them to Doug as examples of just sort of getting back on the horse. And so that's what these are with, and the paper is different. It takes the washes differently, the surface is different. But this is a little horse that lives near where I ride, and he's a little pony, little fat pony. And he's like the little fat kid that nobody wants to play with. And I let him out of his corral, and he tries to, and the other horses just won't put up with him at all. They kick him, and he bucks and rears. And anyway, I'm growing so fond of him. So this is another snake one, a little snake in the garden. And I just did I have a blog, and I write about different pieces and explain what was going on and what was happening. Snake with flowers. And then this little simple, just so simple and so beautiful and so hard to get to. And then there's the pony again, pony bucking. But you can see my body is making up his body. And then this is the last one, Couple with Rain. So it's painted paper that I then scanned and printed out. So it just gets complicated. But there you go, that's what the bodies are made of. The rain is dripped paint, and then the clouds are from different pieces of paper I had. And then they're just, it's coming, Is it rain, or is it nuclear whatever, or is it, the elections coming up or whatever. So anyway, that's my last one. So. George is going to have the microphone and pass it around so you all can ask questions. I want some good questions, okay?
Sure, everyone has a question. The snake shows up quite frequently in your work, so I'm reading it as a strong totem for you. I'm just wondering, psychologically, the meaning of the snake, what is that to you?
Well, it's all kinds of things. First of all, I'm afraid of them. They scare me. So I think you're working with this kind of scary thing, which is fun. And then photographing is kind of fun because are they dead or alive or whatever. But I think they're scary, they're the earth, they're all those, metaphors about what they mean. I do a lot of images of Adam and Eve with that snake. Because it just seems like that snake caused so much trouble. So there's just a lot of meaning, but I do love using them. And snakes in red don't sell, so use it a lot. So Crystal?
Well, I know that you're a really good painter. As a painter, brilliant, glazes and drips and scratches and all the great things that abstract painters do. Has it ever occurred to you, because some of your paintings, the only photographic part of it is maybe a couple of eyes, and otherwise it's just a brilliant painting. Have you ever thought of just doing a painting with no photograph image at all?
Well, yes, I have, as a matter of fact. Good question. So I'll do these abstract paintings, and I just think they're beautiful. But there's something like cheating to me about it. Like they're almost too easy or something. Not that abstract painting's easy, but that the real challenge is how to take this beautiful painting and make something better. So, but no, I've never left just a painting by itself. I mean, I've done paintings where there was no photographic information, but you know, I painted stuff. But just the pure abstract paintings, I've never left them by themselves. And they're wonderful. I mean, you know, of course I'm gonna say that, but. So, anybody else? Got two up here.
It looked like some of your photographs of images, like individuals, you were photographing them from different angles. And I wondered if Cubism or Surrealism was an influence, or any other art movements.
You know, I think the biggest art movement for me is folk art, primitive art. And I think the other stuff is just too heady. I just don't think that way. But folk art, I think I just completely connect with and makes sense to me. And Bill Traylor, I've always loved his work. Diane Arbus was a photographer whose work I really loved. But mostly it's not that I have oh, that's Cubism, I get it. It's more like, it's Cubism, I don't get it. And so I just kind of, I think, exist in that world of, in Mexican art, I love Mexican art, so.
Right.
Holly, can you talk about the metaphor of a child, a large child in a very small house, when it is just the house, but sometimes it's on fire?
Well, that's, I think, when I'm out in the world and I'm walking around looking at things, I'm always thinking, what's really going on in that house? You know, is it a fine house, or is there a wife being beaten, you know, or what is it? The house with a big child leaning over it had to do with, it was teaching, and there was a kid in the class who was clearly in distress, and it was just so distressing because he was also the best artist in the class. But he's sitting with his face to the wall. He was, you know, clearly, physically, was not clean, and so that's what that painting was about. It was about this child in this house, and so I think there's always when I have houses, there's metaphors of how the house is not good, it's not right.
So when it's on fire.
Same thing. I mean, there's stuff going on in that house that you just walk by and thinking, oh, well, and you don't know. You know, I mean, just, I know from my own house that sometimes things are a little rocky, you know, so, anyway. Yeah.
This is a comment more than a question, but what has meant a lot to me listening to you, because you are, if anything, not a sentimental kind of artist, but I think the way you use the word love so frequently, really, to me, it's like that equals you, and maybe you're unconscious, or the part of you that's really making this art. And I think just this passion and this sort of embracing of, you know, the visual world, I just wanted to comment how much that has meant to me.
Oh, well, thank you.
That you love so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love that you use your family in a lot of your pieces. I love that your husband is doing art now, art pieces. What about your daughters?
One daughter is an artist, and the other daughter is in corporate America. So I think last night she said she was embarrassed because people would say, well, what do you do? And she'd say, well, I work in corporate America, and they'd back away. And she said she thought they were thinking she was the other daughter who's the artist, and you know, they could go on and on. And so yeah. What was what? She does. She draws. She's an incredible draftsperson. I don't know if that's a word, but she has this amazing hand. And she's a new mom, so that's kind of interfering with things, but just wonderful stuff. Of course, I'm again going to say that. But poor Ramey was really upset last night at the opening that, oh, Mom, they just didn't want to hear about me because I wasn't an artist. So, yeah.
Holly, first of all, just incredible work. Thank you for coming here. And I'm curious if you could speak to the colors that you've used and if there's any meaning personally or style-wise to what I perceive as a more muted palette with your red occasionally.
Yeah.
And with a color psychology background, I'm curious to see what it means to you and if there's a particular way you look at color.
Well, when I first started out as an artist, I would go out with my watercolors and I would try and match colors because the landscape is so beautiful. You go out by O'Keefe Land and there's amazing colors, and so I would try and match colors. And I had a color chart which showed you how to mix. You have like a triangle and it shows you how to mix the different colors. And I really thought a lot about color and not so much what psychologically it meant, but what worked for me, what looked good, what was close. And then at some point I was able to just drop that. And you'll notice in the show the difference between the oil paint colors and the acrylic colors. They're very different. But again, it's like with everything, I don't think about it, I just do it. And I paint with house paint. I love it. It's you can pour it, you get a bunch for not much money. And so I'm picking the colors that people have returned usually. So, but it's not, I'm not going to say, no, I want this, hot orange red. I'd say, oh, look, there's that nice color that someone was going to paint their bathroom and it didn't. So again, that's not a lot of thought because I try and keep those thoughts far away. And just, now it's so intuitive, and so much a part of the way that I react and interact with different.
Can I ask a question related to that? So whenever I see red in your paintings, it seems so violent.
I think it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the woman talking, listening to herself,
Yeah.
and then also bad father.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then of course the man at the table.
Right.
I think that red is saying, listen up, this is bad. So yeah, absolutely. So.
Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful work. I'm gonna ask a technical question. What is your favorite adhesive? Very good.
I am the adhesive queen. And I have this depth of knowledge. It's so deep and it's so narrow. So I use polymer medium. And it doesn't matter matte or gloss. And if I'm gonna do something that really needs to be adhered, I use polyvinyl acetate, PVA. But for just, the thing I like about the polymer medium is you have about 2 seconds where if you don't like it, you can pull it up. Whereas with the other, the plastic, the PVA, once it's down, it's down. When I started out, I used Yes paste and then quickly discovered that it wasn't inert, that it attracted mold. And so I did all these pieces that then mold was coming in from the back. So for years now, I've used the polymer medium. And I don't have any special kind I like. Usually I get Dick Blick. And again, gloss or matte, it doesn't matter. So, and my students can tell you I'm very hard on them about gluing. No, do it like this. And I have to use a credit card and they have to do it quickly. And I'm hovering over them, shouting at them. So, anyway. Yeah.
Thank you. On some of the artworks that you've shown, you have used dictionary pages as on the surface and then applying painting or applying material on top. And I was just curious is it just because it's visually interesting? Is there something specific about dictionaries? You're not cutting up a great novel or,
Yeah, no.
What is it? Yeah.
I think it's interesting too, because I have a whole bunch of dictionaries, but there's one dictionary that the text is just perfect. Some are too big, some are too coarse, some are too whatever, but that's the visual continuity and the way the little pictures are and stuff. But just that dictionary, and I'm down almost, used up about half the pages. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do when they run out. Yeah, so, somebody else? Oh.
Thank you for sharing thank you for sharing your studio with us. I was really honored that you said you don't do that very often. But when you were showing the picture of your laying out on the sawhorses, what are you painting on? Is that wood? Is that canvas?
Good question. So I don't ever paint on canvas because when you glue paper onto canvas, there are two different materials, and when you change humidities, they go south. One, it absorbs water, and one, what am I saying? One swells and one shrinks. And so you have this, I found out, I sent work to North Carolina and it did not go well. As soon as it came home, it was fine. But I recommend not working on canvas. I use hardboard, masonite, or there's MDF, which is used in cabinetry, but it's heavy. So really anymore, I've gone to using the hardboard. And I get it in like a 1/4 inch. So that's, and you prime it and you get it cut to the size you want. So, anybody else? Yeah, right here.
Hi, I know you teach workshops.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, don't, that's my fault.
What kind of art does your husband do?
Well, he's gone, so I can't say anything about him. It's been about 6 years now, and he's a retired physician, but he'd always loved art. He was always, as I said, telling me yes or no on my pieces. So now he's gone down two roads, and he has a website, Robert Wilson Arts, I think. Because there's another Robert Wilson who's Rainn Wilson's dad. And that's not this Robert Wilson, so I think it's Robert Wilson Arts. But anyway, so he does watercolors, beautiful watercolors, landscapes, and then he does these fantastic sculptures. They're primitive, but not. He'll take a material and he'll shape it to become usually an animal. He just sold a big metal piece to Hobbs, New Mexico, to their community college. So he sort of takes it, and he's always worried about, he calls it the funky chicken, which in people's yards, there are those metal chickens, and so he's always worried that he doesn't want to be mistaken for the funky chicken guy. But really wonderful work, so if you get a chance, and hopefully I gave the correct address, but not Rainn Wilson's dad. It's Robert Wilson Arts. So.
My turn now. Hi, I know you teach workshops. I'm a friend of Jackie Snyder. You just taught a workshop in the South. Can you tell us a little bit about your workshop format, maybe where you're teaching next?
Well, you can go on my website and it will show all the workshops that are upcoming. And they're usually a week long. And basically what we do is get people painting, and then they bring in their materials and then they collage on top of them. And but a lot of it is technical. How do you glue correctly? How do you approach painting? I have people not use brushes much, just throwing and dripping and stuff like that, which is the way I paint. And they're really fun. I mean, we have some members of those workshops who can tell you about them. But yeah, and I just love teaching, I really do. I have some weird gift where I go inside your head and I figure out what you need. And therapist Holly, same deal. So, yeah.
Did you have one? Yeah, real quick. No, I'm sorry. So back there, and then.
Hi, I was just curious with your, it looks like an affection with horses. I was wondering if you ever had the pleasure of meeting Deborah Butterfield, just by chance.
The closest I came to that was, I was in New York standing outside one of the museums, and she and her husband were in line ahead of me. And I felt like, but I didn't say anything. But that's the closest, yeah, I've always loved her work, so. Who else?
Oh, just a quick question. I just wondered if house paint is archival, or do you mix a medium with it to make it more archival?
No, but it's the colors that you have to worry about. The colors fading. And so certain colors are worse than others. People would argue with me about the archivalness of the paint, but as long as you keep it out of the sun, it's not been a problem. It should be okay. Because those paints are on outsides of buildings. They're on walls. So they're pretty good, so.
As an artist, I'm always trying to tap into my childlike mind, and you seem to have mastered that. How do you get there, or how do you get other people to tap into that?
It's a struggle. I'm telling you, it's a struggle. It doesn't, you sort of have to suffer. And I mean, again, this is Holly talking, but when I was younger, I would suffer more to the point that I would just be so miserable that then I think that conscious mind would say, okay, I'm out of here, and then that other part of me could take over. And anymore, I think it's my hands. It's getting my hands going, and they kind of take over and push my conscious brain out of the way, and then and that's what I do in my workshops. I get people to be, I browbeat them into letting their creative selves come out. Crystal's nodding, yeah. And once you connect with that creative self, I don't have anything more to say. You're in charge. That creative self is so powerful and so correct and so right. It's just getting it. It's not easy. So, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So with that right here. Yeah. Yes, then Suda, and then.
Do you use a varnish?
I do use a varnish. I use a varnish that I get online from, I think it's called IT Technologies, and it's a water-based. They use it for digital prints, and it's white. It dries clear. It's archival. It's pretty good. So, but I always use a varnish, always, and I do not use polymer medium as a varnish. You burn in hell if you do that.
All right, one more.
When you do the washes, what sort of paper? Did you say what sort of paper you do that on?
Those were just on regular old paper, like Arch and stuff like that. But I haven't done that much. Those are new. Usually I do it on my substrate, which I'll have drywall mud or whatever, gesso. So.
Holly, when I teach, I tell my students, the more personal, the more universal. Thank you for letting us view the struggle that so many women in our generation have gone through.
Absolutely.
And letting us into as you said, your head. The anger, the fragmentation, children, the world, climate change, rain, the forest, the primal woman. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you indeed. How do you begin a body of work? Do you do a lot of thinking ahead of time?
No.
Do you do any documentation of the things that you think about as you're going through your day? Do you journal?
No. First of all, I avoid it as much as I can. I'm supposed to start at 2, and usually it's like 2:30, 3 before I start because I've got things to do, So I avoid it, and then I go in, and then damn it, you just get those hands going, and then stuff happens. But if anything I think about's worthless. I do have to have some thought in terms of, okay, it's going to be this panel or this. But remember, I've made these paintings, so they're there asking to be paid attention to. So that's really what gets me. And then painting, you just get out there and start doing stuff with paint. So very non-cerebral, very non-planned, very instant gratification kind of deal. So.
Any more questions?
Great questions, you guys. I told you that's my fun, is getting to answer those questions. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So I would like to let everyone know, if you haven't seen the catalog for this exhibit, it's gorgeous, and it's available in the MOPA bookstore, and Holly is going to stay to sign it. And then for the docents in the room, if you hang a little bit, we're going to get a tour on how to tour her works. So thank you very much.